Everybody, welcome to Faith and Books. I decided to do a Christian fiction recommendation video. Especially since when I first started getting into BookTube, that's one of the things I would do is, I would always look up recommendations. And it's actually one of the first ways that I found Christian BookTube. Like, I didn't even know. Like, I was watching BookTube for a while before I got into Christian BookTube, and now it's like all I watch. But so yeah, I figured I'd do some recommendations. I got my tea here in my Winnie the Pooh mug. I wasn't kidding when I said all of my mugs are like Disney, especially Winnie the Pooh. So this is just a very chill video. This decaf tea because I'm like such an old person, but if I drink caffeine after like 2 o'clock, I don't sleep as well, I've learned. So I try to eliminate caffeine after like 1 or 2 o'clock. And so I have like decaf tea and decaf coffee. And so yeah. Oh, I love some tea. I love some hot tea. Okay, so I'm just going to get into it. These are in no particular order. The only one that I did the very last ones. There's 2 of them because they're in a series, but it's one of my favorite. Like, it's probably my favorite series, and it's still ongoing. The first book I have, which when I first started, it took me a long time to get into Christian fiction. I read like 1 or 2 before I really fell in love with them. I would always read contemporary, and I was just like, I honestly thought that the only kind of Christian fiction there was like Amish, which I'm not really that into. Like, I don't think I've ever read one, but that's what I always thought. And I don't know if it's just because I don't know. I don't know why I thought that. So when I figured out that there was like contemporary, like different kinds of Christian books, first of all, I wasn't a huge fan at first. I mean, I liked them, but I wasn't as into them as I am now. Because I think that with being in a different spot in my walk with the Lord has really changed what I like. Like, I love faith-filled books. I love books that have so much faith in them. I'm like, give me all the faith. That's what, if I read something that's considered Christian and there's like barely any mention of God at all, or like nothing, I'm just kind of like, Like, I still like it, but it's not what I'm looking for in the moment. Like, I am definitely in my Christian fiction era, for sure. The first book I have is Then There Was You by Kara Isaac. This is about Paige, and she is from the United States, and she has some stuff happen to her, and she ends up going to Australia, and then she ends up working for a church. And Josh also works for the church. He is he's in the band, and he kind of has seen her and has some of these, like, he has seen her, how do I even explain it? Like, he's got some misconceptions about her. And so it's kind of like an enemies to lovers in that way. Like, they're not super mean to each other, but it's definitely not, like, he's skeptical of her. But it's good. It is very good. And then My Foolish Heart by Susan May Warren. This is about Isadora and Caleb, and it is so cute. Like, it's about this Isadora. She is just kind of stuck in her house. Like, she's had some stuff happen to her where she stays in her house. She doesn't want to leave, but she has this podcast, type thing. I think it's a podcast. Or no, it's a radio. It's part of a radio. Sorry, it's been a couple months since I've read this, but she has a spot on a radio channel, and she gives advice. And then her next door neighbor, Caleb, like he just moves in and he's got some stuff going on as well. And it's so sweet. It is so sweet. And then In Search of a Prince by Toni Shiloh. This is about Brielle, and you've probably seen it if you've watched many booktubers, but she just finds out that she is a princess. So the book is her kind of deciding if she wants to take on the throne, or if she doesn't want to. And if she does, like, she has to get married. And so, the only caveat I would give with that one is I went into it thinking that it was going to be so much about her trying to find a man, like her trying to find the prince. But I feel like the book, personally, I think that a lot of that book was her deciding if she even wanted to become, the next queen. If she wanted to take over. And I feel like just a smaller part was about the romance. But it was still really good, and the faith element in that was really good. And also, I said in my last video that I read In Search of a Prince. To Win a Prince. I said that I read To Win a Prince. I have not finished that yet. I haven't read it all. I meant to say In Search of a Bride. Or In Search of a Prince. So sorry about that. But it's really good. Brielle is just so sweet, and her best friend is so sweet. I forget her name, but yeah, the faith is so woven in that it's just amazing, honestly. And then My Hope Next Door by Tammy L. Gray. This one is about Katie and Asher. Katie is a new Christian. She used to be the bad girl of the town. But she's kind of trying to not necessarily reinvent herself, but she's coming back to the town where people think that she's this bad girl and always see her that way, and trying to kind of get away from that. And then Asher is the guy next door, and I love Asher. He was so cute. He was so sweet. Asher is, which I love the side note, I love the name Asher. I almost named my kid Asher, Jude Asher. I didn't end up naming him that, but that was a contender. But he's kind of on the opposite end. His dad's a preacher, and so he's coming from like a church hurt type scenario. So he's kind of, walking through that, and it's just kind of both of them dealing with their pasts and kind of moving on. So it's really good. It's really good. And then Autumn by the Sea by Melissa Tagg. This is about Sydney and Neil. This I feel like is lighter on the faith elements. It's still a really good book. And I mean, there are mentions of their faith and stuff, but not as much as the other ones. This is definitely lighter on the faith. But like I said, it was still really, really good. Really clean, obviously, because it's Christian, but it's about this girl, Sydney, who was abandoned by her mom. She meets this guy that says that he is hired to see if she is this long lost granddaughter of this woman. And so she agrees to go and, meet with the woman. And then Neil is very skeptical of her at first because it kind of reminds me of like Anastasia Like, there's been people that's like, I am Sydney, or I forget what her name was before, if it was different. But kind of people that say that they are, but they really don't even turn out to be. So he is very skeptical, and she is just like, she's so earnest in her search for trying to find, like, she just wants a family. Like, she wants her family, and it's such a good book. I need to read the other. I think there might be 2 more in the series. I don't remember, but it's so good. It's so good. Okay, then Just Once by Karen Kingsbury. This was my first Karen Kingsbury book, and I feel like I'm a record on repeat because I love all these books, but I genuinely love them. And so this is about Earl and Ellis, and it's a dual timeline. So like, you meet Earl and Ellis in the present time, and then it kind of goes back in time to their love story and how they got to where they are. And it's so good. The faith element is so good. It's all amazing. Which made me actually want to read Redemption by Karen Kingsbury, which is also amazing. Like, that's also on my list. But it's part of the Baxter family, and it's book one in the Baxter family, and it's about Carrie and Tim. And in the beginning, Carrie finds out that Tim is cheating on her. And so it's kind of her journey to, can she forgive him? Does she want to forgive him? What's life going to look like? Does he even want to come back? Do they even want to be together anymore? It's very emotional. Like, it's definitely not lighthearted. It's obviously heavier topics because they're talking about adultery. But it's just a story about redemption. It's probably why it's called Redemption. But I need to read, there's like, I think 20 books or something like that. There's a lot of books in the Baxter Family series, and I need to read. I think they have kids ones also, which I really need to look into more, because I think that would be fun to read with my kids. Okay, I know in the beginning I said that I only had one top one, like, duology, like, series. I only had one top series, and it was at the end. But actually I have 2, but they're 2 different series, and I just can't. I love them both. So the first one is A Voice in the Wind and An Echo in the Darkness. This is book 1 and 2 in the Mark of the Lion trilogy. These are so good. A Voice in the Wind took me a while to get into, honestly, which is why I didn't give it 5 stars. I think I ended up giving it 4 stars because it picked up, definitely. But there are so many characters that I was just, and you get so many points of view, and I was just kind of like, it took me forever to put it all together, to be like, oh, okay, I know who this person is. I know who this person is. It just took me a long time. But after that, like toward the middle and the end and stuff, it was so good. Definitely have book 2 on hand if you read book 1, because you'll want it. And An Echo in the Darkness is one of my favorite books ever, like an all-time favorite. I can't really say too much about it because it's the second in the series, but it is so good. Hadassah is one of my all-time favorite characters. She is so, like, the epitome of what a Christian should be. So I just love her character. And I actually did not like Marcus in the beginning of A Voice in the Wind, but he definitely grows on me. I ended up loving him. So I like him a lot. And then Julia's just Julia. Oh, I didn't even say what that was about. But A Voice in the Wind is about Hadassah. In the very beginning, her family is murdered, and she gets sold into slavery, and she gets into this family that is not like the worst. I mean, she's obviously a slave, so it's not the best, but the family's really nice, and they have 2 kids, Marcus and Julia, and she becomes Julia's maid, or like, I don't know what they call it, like, or, but I don't know what they call it, but her, I don't know, I think it is her maid. And then it's also about Atreides and his point of view, which, I mean, they kind of get woven together, but I wasn't a huge fan of Atreides' storyline, but oh well. Hadassah's and Marcus's made it for it. So, and then the last 2 that I'm going to talk about is When the Day Comes and In This Moment by Gabrielle Meyers. The Timeless series. It is so good. It is such a good series. It's got faith. It's got time travel. It's got romance. It's just so good. Like, oh good. It's about Libby. The first book is about Libby, and she is like a time traveler. She wakes up, and every day she's in a different, it's about Libby, and there's 2 different timelines, and every day that she wakes up in the other timeline. So the first one is in like, I think the 1700s. So she wakes up there, and the next day she wakes up in 1904, the early 1900s, and no time has passed. Like, so she's lived for however long. I'm explaining this really bad, but it's really good. It's a time travel book where she wakes up and every other day she's in a different timeline, but yet no time has passed in the other timeline. So it's just like the next day. But it is so good. And it's her trying to decide. She has to decide, I think it's 21. She has to decide which timeline she wants to stay in. And at first she knows for sure what timeline she wants to stay in. And then like as things go on, things happen, and then she's kind of conflicted, and it's so good. And the second one, I mean, I can't say much because it's, again, the second in a series, but it's so good. I think I may have liked the second one better because it's just as good. So if you've read any of these and you love them, I would love to chat in the comments. Or if you have any other recommendations, maybe I'll get some from the comments. Yeah, I would love to hear them. So have a great day, and I'll see you in my next video.